You're listening to Optimal Fusion, a Shin Megami Tensei podcast.
I'm Austin, and I'm familiar with Shin Megami Tensei.
I'm Patrick, and I'm not familiar with Shin Megami Tensei.
And in this podcast, we'll discuss our playthrough of the newest SMT game,
Shin Megami Tensei V.
For the Nintendo Switch.
Well, hello, Austin.
Oh, hi, Patrick.
Hey, we're back.
It's been a while. It's been a second.
It has been a while.
Mm-hmm.
If I had told you back in November of 2021 that we would be recording not what arguably is not the final episode of this in almost April, probably coming out in April.
Yeah.
Would you have been surprised?
I would be shocked, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
I really would have thought I would have played through this game in maybe 2 or 3 weekends, and that it's some of that might be the podcast does. This was true when we did the Fire Emblem podcast. Of it slowed me down a little bit, and I was grateful for the intentional slowdown. I will say, this has drawn out a little past that for me.
Yeah, but did the podcast slow you down this time?
No.
Well, it didn't slow me down. It kept me playing this game longer, maybe, which we will talk about, I think.
Yeah. I think at the beginning, yes. I think the first section I could have blown through a lot faster and it slowed me down. But yes, at the last 2 sections, I'm really having to push myself.
Yes. So I guess just to be upfront about this, right? So we're kind of planning to do this podcast sort of section of the game by section of the game. So this is our 4th episode. But technically we're on the 3rd major area of the game called Chiyoda, and we have completed that. But I don't know how you feel about completing this game. We haven't really talked about it. I think we've both expressed some, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. What am I looking to say? Uncertainty as to whether or not we might do another episode / finish this.
I think that's right. And we're going to talk about Chiyoda and the Demon King's castle,
That's
which
right.
I think should technically be counted as one section, but shoo fucking wee, did that really lengthen it. And yeah, I
also, to be fair to us,
yes,
we both completed this a while ago, and we were actually going to get together and record this a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
And then various life things happened that made that impossible. And so there are factors like that contributed, but that's only a few weeks if we're being honest.
That's right.
So here we are, however many months after this game came out. Big picture, like this section for me was a mixed bag. Like there were times in it, especially at the very beginning and sort of towards the end, where I felt like it was a huge slog. And then there were times where I felt like I was on fire and having the most fun I've ever had in this game. And so it was a really weird mix for me.
Yes. So that's interesting because I think I'm a little bit the other way. Is when I first got into this section, I was really excited about the demons that were there and the new fusions that opened up from collecting those demons. And near the end as well, I was really enjoying the traversal elements of especially kind of the last section of this map. I found really interesting, where like Horus is at, and I found all of that portion really satisfying. I did hit this middle, like, I need to just grind a little bit to get through it. And then when I got to the Demon King's castle, I was also like, now I have this in front of me. And that felt like, I don't know if you watch competition reality TV shows, but they introduce things just to like lengthen the episode count, and it that's what this felt like to me. You know,
Yeah.
Was like they were like, oh, we need to lengthen this playtime a little bit. Let's add it. Which maybe there's more to it than this, but it did not. That was a very unsatisfying piece of this game for me.
Gotcha. I mean, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe we should wait to talk about the Demon King's Castle.
Okay.
Because I want to respond to that. But I'll tell you what, let's just start at the beginning.
Yes.
We enter this third region of Dot, however we say that, right?
And story-wise, there is this like final confrontation between the demons and this like hierarchical god that has separated the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and demons and humans.
Yeah, there's a big battle happening right when you walk in, and you're
right.
not supposed to be there, right?
That's right.
Like technically Japan was told not to get involved, but they sent you anyway, is my recollection. It's been a while since I first walked into this region, but it was something like that, right?
That's right. And I'm trying to look for her name, but the golden angel who is kind of leading up their charge kind of says, oh, you're not supposed to be here, but since you're here, you might as well help out. But you do, and like Judgment, who is the angel that you kind of recently, when you enter that territory, likely just got access to. You see one of them like die in front of you. So the game's really trying to tell you like
big scary fight.
That's right.
Yeah.
Potentially out of your league.
For me, I felt underpowered when I came into this area, and I was really struggling against a lot of the demons, especially because you kind of start up high.
Yes.
I mean, this is actually I say up high, but there are actually other levels higher than you, but you start on this sort of tier and there's a giant drop off, right? And there's sort of this lower cavern throughout this level. And if I fell down there, those demons were too hard for me at first. And so I had to kind of go back to previous areas, which was fun somewhat, to go clean up a little bit, and fight some of the bigger monsters that I had avoided in the first and second areas. So I did a lot of that and eventually came back and felt comfortable. And so I think that's why at first it felt hard and a little frustrating, is that even just some of what felt like should be pretty basic was difficult. And so exploring was hard. And so if I fell down, I was like, and there weren't easy ways to get back out. Story of this game. So at first I was a little frustrated by not being able to make progress in this region.
I see. I felt like I had to grind just a little bit for that final Lamu battle in the hard mode. So when I got to the new territory, I was like, oh, thank God, demons, that like I'm not just farming. You know what I mean? That was my initial reaction to the section. But you're right. It becomes more complicated later of you are traversing the vertical layers in a more interesting way. But initially, you're wanting to stay up top. And if you fall below, you're kind of punished by being in this pit of higher level monsters and being swarmed. And
I probably feel this way about each region as I go into it. I mean, there's only been 3, but like I was so confused in this region. I mean, I think at the very end, I finally kind of understood it.
Yeah.
But there was like, and this is getting ahead too, but there was like one connection that I just could not find.
Yeah. Like
there was an area I could just not get to it. You know what I mean? It's like, I can see it. You're right there. It's where that map part can be frustrating in this game, where you're like, if there wasn't that invisible wall, I could jump up on that and then I could jump up there. But there's like this really roundabout way to get one of the connections in the map that I found really frustrating. But that was later. That was towards the end. But I did just have a hard time kind of like making progress sometimes.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning, there's is it Loki? No, it's not Loki. There's like a demon up on a rooftop. And then there's another demon on a rooftop across from them, and you can choose whichever one you want.
Dionysus and
like the giant black
Blackjack. because he's the Jack Frost that is
Right.
evil.
So, like,
Black Frost. I'm sorry.
there was a save point right by Dionysus, but getting to the Black Frost character, sometimes I'd just get lucky. And then other times I'd be like, I have no clue how I got to that character. That was one of the rare instances where I think I actually talked to Dionysus, talked to Black Jack, and actually flipped sides. Because usually, like I think we've talked about on this podcast, usually I'm like in favor of, I'm already here, sorry, buddy. But that time I think it was like, oh, I can just warp right over there. So I'll take your side. Which was just whim, really, because
you're like, what's just easiest right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Black Frost, I apologize. Although I kind of think
Black Jack's a better name.
I agree. You're welcome, Atlas.
Yeah. I don't know. So I guess I don't remember exactly how you trigger this, but there's a big fire, right? Is that happen really quickly, right?
So pretty quickly. So like you said, we and I looked up her name, Abdiel.
Yes.
So we run into her. She also aligns herself with Ichiro, our friend who was like the YouTuber at the beginning.
Right, who's kind of already been obsessed with her a little bit.
He like really looked up to her, but now she's kind of recognizing him and puts him in charge of commanding some angel forces.
Right.
So you kind of go through this cave area, and when we show up to the second area, there's like this big firewall, and we see there's this giant fire demon that is preventing a large amount of the forces getting through. And so then that becomes our next getting strong enough to fight this fire demon. And there's like a key that we need that will extinguish some of the fire and allow us to pass.
Yes. And so there's like a couple angels there that say, we need to figure out that. You follow their advice to go a certain route, to go up to a shrine or something like that. There's going to be a shrine.
That's right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is on the way there, at least for me, was a pretty challenging abscess.
There was an abscess, and then
sort of also some enemies that pop up in this for the first time. You might in other areas accidentally fall onto an enemy or something like that, but very rarely previous to this area would you just be walking and then instantly something would like out of nowhere kind of jump at you. But there were some I don't know what they were called. They kind of look like
jester doll situations with the scythe.
Yes, scythe-based dead-looking things that kind of jump out and attack you. They just pop up out of nowhere.
Yes.
And there's a little section where that happens, and there's also an abscess that kind of obscured the way a little bit right there. And that abscess was a little tricky for me.
I think that was one of the harder abscesses to figure out how to get to. Yeah. How
to get to it. And I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that one was challenging fight-wise for me too once I got to it. But I could be wrong. Some of the later ones weren't, but that one was. Again, I think I got on a roll. Like the beginning of this was hard, and then I got on this roll and was just didn't have to grind, was just figuring things out, barreling, getting lucky a lot on first play, or whatever you want to call it, first attacks on a boss. You know what I mean?
Was that leading up to this abscess, or did this abscess kind of break that
no, roll? The abscess was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And even the next boss, I think, was a little challenging for me, maybe not. Maybe I think that's maybe where it started to turn for me. But yeah. So then, you didn't seem to have a trouble with that abscess. It sounds like just me.
This area, I was vibing.
Gotcha.
The first two areas of this, I was vibing pretty good.
Yeah. So then, you are headed theoretically towards this shrine, but there's some demons that start warning you about somebody with a sword.
That's right.
And come to find out that's our human friend, who I wasn't 100% sure was human until we talked about this.
Yeah.
It's been kind of confusing.
So Shohei is human, and he's
Yakumo.
Yes.
That's their last name.
Yes. And
Yakumo.
how we're learning that there's like pairs of people who can make these Nahabinos. They haven't said this, but they talk about being each other's other halves, and that's language
Right.
Lamu used for the woman that he absorbed. And so I'm guessing that they kind of know that they're each other's tree of knowledge, tree of life, other halves. And so we fought Nuwa in the past, and now we're fighting him specifically.
Yeah, and was that one a challenging fight for you? I think it took me a few tries.
It was, and this is where I got a little frustrated with this area. Was I feel like previously areas have kind of like given you the demons that you need for a fight a little bit, or kind of hinted at it's there, or I felt like this one I really had to take time to tailor my team specifically for this fight, and in a way that really slowed me down.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk at all about demons that you were using around that time? Do you remember? Is that like sort of towards the beginning of this area? Do you even know?
So I don't fully recall. What I do remember though is this is around the time they introduced the elemental physical attacks, and so I think if I remember correctly, he was weak to electricity, and so my team ended up being a lot of demons with physical electrical attacks, and I think he is he takes half damage or maybe reflects one of the two normal physical attacks. And so I think this was the fight that was telling us like, oh, you need to start using these elemental physical attacks, and it gets, if you hit the elemental weakness with these, the physical damage negation doesn't matter.
I tried to keep some snapshots of different saves this time around.
Smart.
In my mid 40s leveling, which I just loaded up, and I'm at one of the earlier save spots in this region. I have King Long, the dragon, Chinese dragon looking thing, Macabre, which is the character we were just talking about, that pops up out of nowhere, and Black Frost, another character we were just talking about. But I think somewhere shortly around there, to your point, I picked up, I forget their name, Nui, the sort of like tiger looking electric thing.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, tiger is not the right word. It's more like some sort of beast. Starts with an N. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
I really like that one for a while, because they had a super strong electric physical attack at the time, comparatively to. And
he's the demon also who you will see tons of in the Demon's King,
Castle. The Demon King's Castle. Yeah.
Castle. I'm trying to find him. There's also a lot of Orthus around those areas, and I remember using him. He's kind of the two-headed lion.
Oh yes, there are a lot of those running around on the bottom layer.
Mm-hmm.
So I took down. Oh, who I also used a lot around this time?
Who?
Well, a couple of them. Now that I'm looking and remembering, sort of towards the beginning / middle of this area. The bipedal like jaguar with the loincloth.
Yes.
Like a very promiscuous, or not promiscuous. What's the word I'm looking for? Not covered very well.
Yes. So
Osei, right?
Osei. He very much gives me like underwear model vibe.
Yes, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
we like Osei.
Osei is showing it off.
He's looking good.
And then another one I used a lot around here is Yoshitsune.
Yes,
who I still really like. Has that one attack where it's like hits 8 random. Like it requires a lot of your MP or whatever this game calls it. Is that what it's called in this game? I can't remember now.
MP. It is MP.
Okay, good. Your MP, but like all hits are critical, and it's 8 of them, and so you can just a great attack. And, you know, you give that character some MP boosts so that it has a higher
Yes.
ability, or you level it up some and you can just
Go to town.
Yeah, spam that attack.
Yeah. And it's great if it's multiple enemies, then like that will
Right.
spread, but also if it's one, then like 8 criticals against one character is fantastic as well. I also had him at that time and still have him now. And I can't remember if it was at this boss battle or if it was directly after it, but I got a special fusion of Atavaka, which was like way beyond my level spread at the time.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But I still have him as a party member, and he has been clutch in a number of these battles. He particularly has resistance to both light and, or nullifies both light and dark magic, and that has just become clutch. I also feel like this area is a lot of play with the light and dark magic, both in what you're collecting and your bosses will throw out a lot as well. And I feel like, and so maybe we should talk about this in other installments of Shin Megami Tensei. Light and dark magic have been either complete kill buttons if you're hitting the weakness, or they don't do anything.
Oh, okay.
Don't do any damage. And so there used to be boss battles where the whole boss battle was like just staying alive and hitting them with either light or dark, whichever they're weak to, until they die. And their stats would otherwise be such that like they have very little other exploitable weaknesses. And it didn't happen all the time, but there would be like 1 or 2 boss battles kind of like that in the game, or at least this was true for 4. And I found that really interesting. I kind of, it being more of a
just another element in this.
That's right. And sometimes you will get that auto kill, but it does seem like it doesn't proc against bosses ever.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Light and dark are the only ones that auto kill in this game, right?
That's right.
Okay, yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, there's that element, but I hadn't really absorbed that until you just said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all goes well. You beat Yakumo.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is a little slight story moment, talking, you know, the Nahabino stuff. Kind of like this is where I got a little confused by their position too, of like they kind of are positioning themselves on is not on either side.
Mm-hmm.
To me is how I read it, right? And they're like, you're foolish for fighting for Bethel, but we also want to kill all these demons. And I was like, what do they want?
And it also sounds like his position and Nua's position aren't 100% aligned, and that they themselves are kind of button heads a little bit. But like you said, exactly who stands where and how that fits into the larger picture is unclear to me.
Yeah, so I got a little confused because I just felt like they're like, oh, every time you kill a demon, they seem happy, but they also seem to not want to like help humans. And so I'm like, well, they just want everybody to die?
Yeah. Who do they stand for? It's unclear. Yeah.
So then correct me if I'm wrong, but you come up on that shrine finally, right? After this. And there are
just a little north of there. Yeah.
Up on a hill, sort of in a dead end.
Yes.
And there's 3 demons that you talk to.
Yes.
I think they're Japanese deities, or maybe it's a mix. I can't remember.
That's what I recall.
Yeah. And if you have happened to have beaten that giant rock demon from the first world, I think after you do the kind of mission-based stuff, maybe I'm getting ahead of us here. What happens when you meet these 3 demons immediately? They tell you, oh, you think you can beat that fire person?
They give you some kind of quest that if you complete, they give you the key that you need. I forget exactly what the quest is, but
what is that quest? What do you have to do for these demons? I don't remember. I think it was like something I had already done, maybe is what it was.
Got it.
I'm trying to remember.
I honestly don't recall, and I'm not able to find it in this moment. But you're right.
It's like a talisman that they have. right?
Yes. Well, maybe you don't do a mission for them. Maybe
Yeah,
they
I think they just
give it to
give you the talisman.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but that's what I'm kind of looking at here.
But then you're right. After they give you the talisman, I think it's after you beat Cert, which you do with the talisman. When you come back to them, they will give you a side quest to go beat the rock golem.
And I think I'd already beaten the rock golem. That's where I was getting confused.
Yeah.
And so it was instant like, oh, here's the rock golem now. He's just hanging with them. And then if you talk to them again, they can fight you, I think.
Oh.
And it's pretty hard.
A tough battle.
I don't think I was not prepared for that.
Got it.
As I recall. It was something that they then, and I was like, sure, I'm on a roll here. And then no, couldn't do it. But yes, I think after you get this, you can go and fight Cert, who's responsible for the fire that was impassable.
That's right.
Before. You now have this talisman, and you can go through the fire and fight Cert, this giant.
He's huge.
When you fight him, not so much later when you get him on your team is typical for this game.
That's
But
right.
but yeah, just like the biggest, I feel like, thing I've fought in this game.
Yes. Big boy.
Galactus style character.
This big fire lava sword that he summons for his fire attacks. Yeah.
And
it's
this
neat.
this is where I felt like I was on a roll because first try Cert took him out.
Nice.
No problem. You know what I mean?
He was, I felt that way too. And not in a oh, this is too easy, but this satisfying, maybe in contrast to the other character of oh, I feel like I just naturally have the right demon composition for this fight.
And there was a demon under where you fought Yakumo,
Under the bridge.
An optional boss.
Yes.
That I killed right around this time too, that I beat on my first attempt.
Yes.
And this is where I started to feel like I was on a roll. And there was some abscesses that you come across along this way too after you beat Yakumo. No problems. I was just kind of whereas previously bosses and abscesses were taking me a couple tries. I mean, and typical for this game where you might have to go in, figure out what they do, die once at least, reorganize your team, come back, and maybe you get lucky, or maybe you realize you need to do something. I was just kind of I'm getting lucky / have the right things / just some of those I kind of barely got through, but it felt good. First attempt, and I figured it. I got on the fly, made some changes, kind of. You know what I mean?
And you have that victory. It's yes,
yeah, that felt satisfying.
So, and this is part of this game for me is that. So between Yakumo, to get this talisman, you travel through this pretty wide area of the map, and you take out, I think, 2 abscesses. You meet some new demons. There's all kinds of side questy things to check out here. And then you finally get to Cert, which is why you came here in the first place. And you have to kind of backtrack a little bit for that. But you gain 8 to 10 levels in that journey. And I think that is part of this,
the leveling started to increase the rate at which you're leveling, it felt like, around here. Is that what you're saying, or no?
Well...
Or the amount of leveling required?
I feel like this one quest happened in a very small amount of space on the map and in the game, but maybe took me
a long
8
time.
to 10 hours.
Yeah.
And so the feeling of progress, even when I'm being successful, it feels like things are moving very slow. And even when I'm feeling this increase of at least I'm leveling faster now, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm progressing through the game faster.
No, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this area is bigger yet still. It felt honestly, it kind of felt to your point, this should have maybe been the end of this area. And then, but I also felt like I was kind of cruising, and you come across that star demon after you beat Cert, and they tell you about Ishtar, and there's these giant sort of like vine / tentacle-y things kind of blocking your path or whatever. I mean, they're not blocking it, but like in this area that you're in,
there are these like devices that you activate.
Yeah, and then the devices as well. The star tells you about like how you know, if you want to fight Ishtar, I guess theoretically you can fight Ishtar without defeating or without deactivating these devices, and it's harder.
Yeah.
Or you can go and defeat them all, and that nullifies one of Ishtar's attacks.
It takes out her,
or just a whole element, right?
Her Matasuchi or whatever gauge. She just doesn't use her gauge, which is wild to me, because I did when I got to that fight and I had activated all the devices. I was like, this battle is so easy, and that's why is all of those battles you really have to plan for the enemy's surge when they use their gauge.
The devices is where I hit a wall. Like, I was cruising, like I said, I was having the most fun I'd have. I was beating optional bosses, you know, looking for these devices. At first, I felt like I was making progress. But then this is where this third area really got to be super frustrating, because you could see a device, you could head towards it on the map, and it would be almost like you need to go the complete opposite way, but not, because that would actually make sense then or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's just like the path between seeing a device and even having it marked on your map to actually figuring out the route to it, I found very frustrating. Like, I think I got 3 or 4 of them pretty easily, and then the last few were just like a struggle. And the very last one is what the thing I was kind of alluding to earlier, where there was like a connection that I had just never made on this map. Like, I could see this thing, and there's one kind of up on almost like a castle like hill, sort of in the center of the map.
Okay.
I'm going to pull it up and try to show you.
Show me.
But like, I could be wrong about the exact location of this too, but like, somewhere in like, I want to say this region maybe.
Okay.
But there was like some connection here that I had not made between 2 of the areas that you had to kind of like do, which was kind of like an underground.
There is that kind of cave
tunnel
that goes back to the first
and
section.
I had no reason to go over there until this last thing. I didn't, you know, and I spent a really long time trying to get there, and I found myself doing the same thing over and over again, like making the same mistakes, trying to kind of like
figure out.
Eventually, if I just follow the wall, right, like I'll eventually like, okay, no, I got to go get up on that level, follow the wall. No, I'm back at the same place I was last time, and this is routing me back this way towards the beginning or whatever, is what often would happen for me. And like, you know, just the verticality / one directional nature of a lot of these connections, like, or not one directional, but like there's one connection between this area and that one. And it just like, I found it so frustrating to the point where I was like, you know what? I'll fight Ishtar without doing this.
Wow.
And I lost. And it's like, okay, I'll go figure it out. You know, like, and then like you said, I don't know, did you have any trouble finding all these things?
So this is where you and I kind of differ on this. I honestly had found these devices earlier and you couldn't interact with them. And I was frustrated because I was like, there's these cool things on this map and I have no idea what they're there for. So when they said, oh, there's these switches, I was like, I know where all these fucking switches are and I'm going to go switch these switches. And I found this very satisfying because I had found these things before and I was like, what am I supposed to do with them? And was trying to figure it out. So finally, when they introduced it, I was like, I know where to go. I know what to do. Yep.
Well, kudos for you. Man, that was maybe the most frustrating part of this game for me.
Wow.
Up to date. That 7th fucking switch. And you know, you feel so dumb too. I felt so dumb when I finally found it. Cause like,
got it.
There was part of me that it started to think it was over where it was, the connection. And then I went over there once and like just didn't find it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, well, that's not it.
You're like,
and so I wrote that off. And so I kept doing the same stupid thing until eventually I was like, it has to be over there, I guess. And I found it and I was like, okay. You know, it's like a little bridge that you can miss or something like that.
Yes.
Like then you drop down and then you go through a tunnel or whatever it was. Doesn't matter.
Well, once again, I kind of find the like finding these little hidden pathways and all that very satisfying in this game. But I can understand the the frustration if that is a barrier that you keep hitting, and if the game's map does very little to kind of lead you that way.
There's some elevation on the map, but not enough.
Yes.
And I don't know that there's a great solution. I think that's somewhat intentional to have this be a confusing elevation with specific routes you have to take, but I found it to be not one of the least fun parts of this game.
Well, so, and maybe this is also what I want to talk about is instead of having traditional dungeons, kind of like we'll be talking about the Demon King's castle here in a second, and that is maybe more of a traditional dungeon and maybe more in line with what dungeons have looked like in the past in SMT.
Gotcha.
This game seems very committed to this new, having this like pseudo open world where you have this map with these elevations that you're navigating, and that is kind of the main
it's the main gameplay of it, right? Like
gameplay.
It's the main loop to like figure out the connection between this spot and where you need to be and fight your way through it, and then kind of get to know it almost.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to figure it out when you need to either go back or just whatever.
And like sometimes that's fun for me, and
sometimes
it's not.
Most of the time it wasn't for me.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be, and I just feel like, again, totally could be me, but I feel like there's been a complaint about this game is that it's just too obscure. Like, the abscesses on top of how hard it is, even when I clear all the abscesses and I look at that map and I'm trying to find that seventh thing.
Yeah.
It is not obvious which way I haven't properly explored to find the one little connecting path because of the way it looks. But I beat this horse to death already. So.
I hear you. And in the there's also the subway lines, and sometimes you have to jump on the subway.
Be on top of them.
Yes.
There's like a little bit of light platforming to it.
Yes.
Which I actually kind of like platforming a lot, but like something about the way it's done on this, it's like light platforming, but really obtuse or something, Sure. Yeah.
And so that's the plotting of this battle and just generally the story of the game. So I will say in Shin Megami Tensei 4, I felt like there was a very complex plot, and there were many characters who were very invested in different moral quandaries that kind of came up during the story. And when I hit a period where the battle felt a little repetitive, that what encouraged me to keep going was this investment in the character and story.
Yeah.
And eventually I would come back to enjoying the battles, but when those got exhausting, that was what kind of kept me going. In this, the story is not the thing that is continuing to pull me through. In the exploration, I feel like I'm having more fun with it than you are. But even that hits dips. So both the exploration and the battle, those two things, you're getting a lot of those two things, and there's nothing kind of giving a break or encouraging me to keep going.
I agree, and I think I have more to say about that, but maybe we should, at least my part, I might make more sense to talk about once we get out of the Demon King's castle.
Okay.
Because I feel like I 100% agree that the story and the characters in this game, it's not clear. I'm not invested. I don't, I wish there was more of that and a little bit less of each region.
Yeah.
I think, but I liked the Demon King's castle at first.
Interesting.
Like I liked like 4/5 of it. And I know we actually have talked about this, not on the podcast, about the difficulty of it and how they adjusted that and that kind of stuff, which we should talk about. But I think I was really frustrated by finding that last thing. I think I had decent success fighting Ishtar after I actually got all of the whatever those obelisk
The
things
devices
were, the devices.
activated,
That was easy once I did that. And then, I think I was ready for a little bit of a story beat here, but you don't really get it. They kind of just show you that they're charging this Demon King's castle. There's some angels or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Abdiel, was Abdiel even there? I don't think so, actually, now that I say that. I don't remember.
I don't think so.
But you push on after just a small cutscene, I think, into the Demon King's castle.
That's right.
And here's why I kind of liked the Demon King's castle. Maybe to your point that it was a little more of a traditional dungeon. First time, well, not the first time in the game, but one of the few times we're not in dot. Like visually, this is unique area. Like we had a little bit of a combat area at the school earlier. And but now this like felt new and fresh, and I feel like that's something that's kind of missing in this game.
Sure,
is that it's just the same desert wasteland everywhere,
and 3 different colors.
Yeah, and it doesn't a little bit more mix up would have helped. I think some of that, like if these areas were more unique. And I think this, even though it was kind of dark and dreary and not that exciting in some ways, it felt a little bit fresh. Despite
something
that.
New.
Yeah, something new,
yeah.
A different shape. Like, everything was kind of square based, and it wasn't necessarily super straightforward always, but it was like, I could kind of feel my progression on the map, whereas I couldn't in the other areas so much.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I had a sense of like, you would get to a place and it would be like second level completed almost. And you'd be like, okay, like I that was the second level. I'm on to the third, and I don't know how many there are, but like, and I, as I would explore them, the squares would fill out, and it just made a little more logical sense to me. And so I also felt like I was able to choose to fight enemies or run in a way that was more satisfying to me.
Yeah.
And at first, the puzzle aspect of this, because I think I just had this connection in my head, is that there's a lot of puzzle aspect of these maps.
Yeah.
And of like exploration. It's less exploration and more like puzzle solving exploration. And that the specifics of it hasn't worked for me, but it did in the Demon King's castle. I think. I've talked a lot, so I'll let you go.
You're great. So I already mentioned I did not like this section, and I agree with you that I appreciated the now having narrow hallways and having the square space just kind of changing the scenery in a meaningful way. I felt like there was a lot of empty and unused space, especially in the earlier sections of this, in a way that felt unsatisfying to me. I think the last section where you are doing a lot more kind of platforming and working of the wind puzzles, I've found that the kind of final section to be kind of the payoff of this area. But initially, I was really bored by them. I was like, God, just running through hallways. Got to time my steps a little bit with this wind. And so this is maybe the right time to talk about. My understanding is that this whole dungeon was a lot harder, and then changed with a patch after a week or two of release, where they made this easier across the board on all difficulty levels. And there's no way to go back and play the old castle.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about. I'm sure that somebody has footage of it somewhere on the internet,
online.
But I don't know if I'm curious enough to actually go watch it. But I am kind of curious to read a summary of what they changed, because like you said, the first 3/4 or so of it, and actually maybe more like the first 4/5 of it, didn't feel like ridiculously easy, but it felt not as challenging. The very last part frustrated me a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but it's like you're discussing the wind. They have these sort of wind, I don't know what you call them, just like parts of the wall and floor that will blow your character up or across.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of fun figuring those out. But then towards the end, I got to a point where if you make a mistake, or there was one section where you have to time it, right? Like sometimes you would have to like wait.
Yes.
Typical platforming. So I was enjoying this, like, of like, be patient, go at the right moment, be patient, go at the right moment. But there was one that I found to be a little tricky, and if you messed it up, you were sent back so far.
Yeah.
Like, and also it was a little confusing. So sometimes I would get sent back and be like, wait, where am I? And how do I get back on the right path? Because you could kind of start working yourself the wrong direction a little bit, or just like,
yes,
there were some misdirection areas you don't really need to go explore. I might be misremembering a little bit, but
yes. Well, and I specifically remember kind of near the end, there is one fan that is blowing up from the floor, and you have to hit it at a way where you fly at an angle and hit this other one that's shooting across, but not the one that's directly above it, but getting that angle and the timing just right was kind of finicky. And less of a knowing what to do and just like mechanically getting it.
And there was one section where you're kind of timing your walk or run to not get hit by the fans, and then you have to jump and then avoid one, and then jump and avoid one. And for some reason, the jumping and avoiding caused me a bit of pain in that section. Was another one where if you get blown by those, you're kind of like set way back. And I also would be like, okay, now where do I go?
Where am I at?
yeah. Which direction am I supposed to go now? So, but all that said, I did rather enjoy the Demon King's Castle. There was like everything in this game, maybe a touch too well, except for the story beats, maybe a touch too long.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's the fungus demon that you fight. I don't remember their name. I should probably look that up while we're talking here.
I had him up earlier, yeah.
So like, I don't remember exactly when this was in the Demon's Castle. I want to say it's like 3/4 of the way through.
Chernobog.
Yes, Chernobog. You come across this, you fight them, and that felt to me like, okay, that's it, right? Like that's the Demon King.
That's really funny.
This boss and be done, and then you beat them, and it's like nothing. You're just like on to the next. I think that would have been the right length for me of this area, and I think that's true of all these areas. It's like for me, they've all felt like you get to a point and you're thinking that should be the end, and it's not.
I feel it too, but we disagree. I feel like the latter half, we should have just jumped right into the more interesting win puzzles of the first half.
Beginning.
Yeah, I could have done without. You run into Chernobog halfway through the Demon King, and I'm like, oh, I need certain things that I don't have, and I can get them easily through fusion. But then I had to leave the Demon King's castle to do a little bit of farming, of collecting certain demons to use for fusion. And once again, fight him, go do 2 or 3 hours worth of fusion and customization and collecting of demons and kind of that whole cycle. And then I come back and I had a great fun doing that. But then just like,
and a lot of time. Yeah, this is a game that doesn't necessarily feel like it respects your time.
That's right.
And I think, but to say something positive, is that it just struck me. I didn't actually have to leave the Demon King's castle myself. I didn't have to do a lot of grinding. I think I was just leveled properly here.
Yeah.
And so I didn't fight a lot, but I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it because all the demons in there are aggro. Like they're all trying to get you.
Yes.
And I didn't really need to fight them. So it was kind of fun for me to like be avoiding them, except for when I got knocked off by the wind and then had to like avoid them or got slammed into one. Because there were a couple areas towards the end where there were a lot and you did have to be careful.
Yes.
Like there was just 10 guys or 10 enemies
swarming
you. And if you weren't smart or you got unlucky and they attacked first or something, you could really be screwed. But
yes,
I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it, of being like, I'm in a good place here, so I need to avoid these characters, and the challenge of avoiding them / getting into an accidental fight could be, it felt right, like, you know what I mean, whereas in other times it didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So at the end of this, we do fight Ariok, and he is this big demon with this like mouth belly, and his tongue coming out,
kind of disturbing looking mouth in his. Yeah.
I love it. This is the kind of body horror I'm here for.
Yeah, like a sideways mouth, more like a vagina with teeth in his stomach.
Very yonic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and this is also a story beat that felt very unsatisfying to me.
Yeah. Who is this? I don't care about this demon.
Well, so he's the one who delivers the news to us that the like big Yahweh god that Abdiel worships, and who we understand created this like parallel Grace Tokyo to cover up the Tokyo that was destroyed by demons, that he has been killed. And so it's unclear to me, is he the demon king whose castle this is? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so too. But this is where the story in this game does not do any favors, in that I fight all these demons and kill them, and I don't have much investment in why.
Yeah. And so that's the like big capital G god of this game has been like unceremoniously killed off screen.
And theoretically the whole time?
Well, I think that this is our man who maybe just did it. And once again, that's kind of unclear too.
Yeah, you seem to have absorbed the story better than I have, but I was under the impression that we've just been duped and God has been dead for a while.
Oh, like we stormed his castle and then like, oh, surprise, no one's actually here.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Okay.
You're probably more right than I am. But that's, to me, is more of a point that, like,
the fact that it's unclear is
I'm very unclear about any of the story, because it's a little weird, and then it's sparse, and it's hard for me to retain.
Yeah.
And it's also a bit misleading at times. like, you know, at the beginning of the game, we have these 4 high school students set up that feel like they're going to be important, but they're not. That's not what the story's about at all. You know what I mean? Like, 2 of them are kind of in the game.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them more, I guess, but.
Yes. I agree with all of that. So we fight him, and he summons 2 of the star friends that we fought before. And so really part of his fight is just handling the 3 of them, and the fact that they have kind of different weaknesses and magics. But once you take out his 2 minions, he himself is pretty easy.
Yeah, I kind of breezed past Chernobog, and I think here I had to maybe think about what I was doing, but it wasn't, like you said, ridiculous. But I don't think I beat them first attempt.
Yeah, I think it took me 2 or 3 attempts. And I did have to do quite a bit of fusion and preparation. Let me see. I think the party I have now has changed a little bit, but looks quite a bit. Yeah, I used Yoshitsune for sure.
8 crits.
Yep.
8 crits.
Adavaka was another go-to. I used Dominion. Oh, I feel very satisfied summoning Hydra.
Oh, yeah.
That made me feel very good. Kushinada Hime was one of my healers who played a crucial role. Oh, and Loop Garu, who was one of the sub-bosses of part 2, I could also summon, and he was a key member of that boss battle.
So, what is your party currently leveled at around this time? Because presumably we haven't done much past this in terms of battling.
My main character is at 57.
Okay. We're in about the same place. I'm 56, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 56. So I currently have the party of Chimera, Nui, and Hecatoneres. I'm guessing that's like a Greek
That's the all the arms and all the eyes guy with,
With
the
the
big
big
old
butt.
mouth and the big butt.
He's got a big butt.
He got a big butt. He's got all those glutes got to hold up all those arms.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, story wise, we get a little more story here. Right.
Once again, not upset at all the underwear model demons we've got.
The prominent butt on the otherwise horrific looking creature.
That's what we're here for. At least me.
So then we go back to Tokyo, right?
Yep.
And I think I had a little bit of trouble triggering the right event in Tokyo. I think I just kind of wandered around. I think maybe I went back to the wrong part of Tokyo because there's 2 entrances.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Not a big deal. But I honestly don't remember the exact order of things, but we're talking to Prime Minister / head of Japanese Bethel.
Yes.
And we're talking to our 2 high school friends who are still alive.
Yes.
Did the guy's sister die or did she just drop off the map?
So she is hanging back at the ferry
Okay.
forest, and then our other friend,
She's dead.
she's dead, but it's kind of hinted that she might still come into play somehow.
Yeah.
She heard some kind of divine voice saying, like, your role's not done yet.
Oh,
as she
right,
was
right,
dying.
right. I guess, and we get a little bit of those 2 characters, but I'll be honest that the whole high school element, it feels like they really wanted this to be high school and have the high school students and have that vibe, but also didn't.
Kind of ditched it.
Yeah.
Well,
Like they set all this up at the beginning and then it just doesn't feel related or necessary.
I agree and I don't agree.
Okay.
This is my frustration with the game is that the next few scenes, so Hayao Koshimizu, our prime minister / leader of Bethel, tells us that he himself is like some kind of god or deity.
Right, like a Japanese deity of some kind, right?
That's right. And that he is now going to kind of lead this charge against Bethel to kind of take control of Bethel, maybe. That we're
breaking away kind of a sense things, right?
That's right. And so Abdiel is going to lead this conversation with the different branches of Bethel, but we're going to kind of pseudo stage a coup or kind of like push back against them when we get there. And he asks the main character, but also those 2 other high school students to be there and present and kind of be his like muscle or his bodyguard.
Yeah, which feels like you picked the wrong crew.
Weird. It's weird. But so we get there and there is a squabble between Abdiel and these other gods.
This is the kind of moment I've been waiting for all game, is like an interesting story beat.
Yeah. So it feels like surely we are in the final stages of this game. This story moment is the story moment that I wanted decades ago in this game. And I feel like what we're possibly gonna get, but I haven't gotten this far. So Abdiel, we then fight Abdiel.
Right, and that's where I stopped.
Same.
Like I couldn't beat Abdiel on first attempt and honestly felt way underprepared for it.
Yes.
Which is a frustrating part of this game for me too, that every time I go to a new area, I feel underprepared. Whereas at the end of it, I felt okay.
Yes. But so I feel like maybe the story that I've wanted all along lies just on the other end of this, but then how much of that can there be? Because, and what I'm getting at that I felt like is implicit is that maybe me and the other high school characters are all going to become possible Nahabino options for these different schools of thought that are represented by these other gods. And I feel like if we could have gotten to that beat a lot sooner, and if that was the thrust of the story, I would have found that much more interesting.
And maybe we can explain that in case somebody's listening that hasn't played this game. amazing
that you're here.
But like, yeah, so this story beat is sort of, I think the discussion is about that it's rumored that God is dead.
That's right.
And the forbidden act of merging with a human and making a Nahabino, well, there's one right there, and they're working on your behalf. So
what's the issue?
What are the rules? If that's, you know what I mean? And so these other gods presumably are interested in it, and they are powerful and sort of have their own, like, well, if God's dead and you're allowing there to be a Nahabino, then we were going to do our own thing, kind of a sense. And you go around and you talk to each one of them. And then I think you're forced to fight Beth or Abdiel.
That's right. And I think you're going to then choose someone to like align with of the other options that were given. But it is so in the story, big capital G God separated, like demons and humans are each halves. And when they combine, they ultimately create what could rival this capital G God. So now that he, in the story, is a he, it feels so weird that my training is to not call God he. That now that God is dead, these other demons can fuse with their human counterparts and become Nahabinos, and kind of reclaim this godhood that has been stolen from them. Which, so like, I think that is a super fascinating idea, and wish this was the thrust once again earlier on, and that there was more investment in these specific demons trying to get this godhood in this particular way.
Yeah, I think they spent so much time at the beginning of the game setting up Tokyo being invaded by demons, and you're this high school kid.
Yeah.
And they didn't even actually spend that much time on it. But like, that is the story we get at the beginning.
Yeah.
But that story doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there, but we've just been wandering around in this desert.
Yeah.
For a really long time.
Yeah. And if these other high school characters were like having these interesting relationships with demons and like, I feel like there's a lot of that's right, or you. But I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential in all of this, and I feel like a lot of that is like coming to head in this story beat moment in this really bittersweet way.
The only character that's somewhat interesting to me is it Ichiro, which is he the one that
with
has
the yellow hoodie?
Yeah, is him, because he's the only one that sort of has personality and like and it's sort of an arc of this, like I'm I want something. He wanted to be famous,
mm-hmm.
and then he wanted to be a good trainer, and then thought or a demon, whatever, and then thought he couldn't, and then found something. Like the only character, maybe in the whole game that like has an interesting story arc. And so I'm kind of cool with Ichiro, but really all the other characters in the game feel one-dimensional, or like they're not used to their potential.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's where we are. I'll be honest that like I got to that point, and having to fight Abdiel right there felt like a real letdown. Not that have any love for Abdiel, but more just like, oh gosh, I have to have another big fight right now. Like I just was ready. I was in this juicy story moment. Felt like I had earned some more story here, and not a boss fight.
And also, and
not one that I had zero preparation for. Can't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe I honestly tried it once and gave up. Maybe I could beat it if I switched my demons around and, changed my affinities and all that kind of stuff. But
so I don't have to do tons of work. I need to do some tailoring of my team to go back in the fight. I don't think I have as much work to do, it sounds like, as maybe you felt like you
maybe not if you're at level 57 and I'm you know what I mean, at 56, but
mostly it's like I think if I change my character's affinities a little bit and a few other things. And I'm looking at my clock right now of how long I have played this game.
Right, according to the Switch.
115 hours.
Yeah.
One playthrough, and I'm not even done yet.
Wow. think you've got almost twice as much time as me.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. My Switch says 60 or
Okay.
more, which I think is just fascinating in and of itself.
Well,
But you're playing on hard.
So A, I'm playing on hard. B, and you know this about me, Patrick.
Yeah, we've said it on here.
I spend hours at the fusions looking at. So I want to create this particular demon. What are my 5 different options that I can create this demon? What are the skills that come on those demons? What is that going to look like for this demon? I spend so much time obsessing over that.
I don't.
I take physical hand notes. It's horrible.
Yeah, I just go with what is the cheapest, and or do I not want to get rid of that demon in my party right now?
I am an obsessive personality.
That's fine. And if you're having fun, it's fine.
So there are times when this is part of the fun for me. So this is also, we did Fire Emblem, and this was part of my thing with Fire Emblem, and it's true with I'm playing Triangle Strategy right now.
Yeah, which we should talk about a little bit, because I feel like, so like for the Super Switch Heads podcast, we did an episode on Triangle Strategy, so I played the demo.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, this is the RPG I want to be playing.
Yeah.
Like bright colors, story. You know, like the battles are kind of challenging for me because I'm not very good I'm better at turn-based stuff like in this than I am at sort of the strategy movement stuff. But I actually found it not too hard, at least the first few battles. But just like all this lore, all these interesting characters that are fleshed out.
Yeah.
And like the art style is more my style too. I found it to be, and I said this exact phrase, but I'll say it again, a breath of fresh air after playing Shin Megami Tensei V.
So I'm experiencing that as well, and specifically around, once again, I know that I keep comparing this, but I think that it's fair. In Shin Megami Tensei IV, I feel like the story decisions that I made carried some weight, and so then to see Triangle Strategy be so successful at making your decisions feel like they have
like they're changing something
important consequences.
Yeah, but in Shin Megami Tensei V, it really does feel like when I talk to Yakumo or somebody, and they're like, "Well, which side are you on?" I don't think it matters.
You're like, I don't really,
and I also don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know which side I'm on because I've gotten so little information. I'm kind of like, I have zero opinion.
Their positions are unclear, and what's at stake is even unclear.
Yes.
Yep.
What is at stake? Like, and which side is on which side kind of a situation. Because it does a good job of making everything seem a little gray and shady, but not a good job of making, like you said, what's at stake or who's like really what their position is.
That's right. I will say, if you, like us, have played this game and are loving aspects of it, but the story piece is really not doing it for you, my recommendation is to go back and play 4. I'm liking this game. I think 4 is the superior game.
Yeah. Well, I here's a question.
Yeah,
because I am on the fence, and like having talked about this has got me a little more excited about it again. But I was kind of at the point to be like, if you feel like calling it here, I am okay with that. Like, I feel like I have gotten my money's worth out of this game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not upset about having bought it. I've enjoyed it, and what comes to my mind is the idea of throwing a good time after, well, not after bad, but that recognition that, like, I feel like the time I invest might just be to tick a box and beat a game, to do another episode, less so than, like, I'm going to have fun. But I don't know. I'm also, like, after having talked about it, I've gotten a little bit jazzed here of, like, oh, yeah, maybe I do want to beat this game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. How are you feeling about it, especially if you picked up Triangle Strategy?
I think, like you said, Triangle Strategy has been this really nice breath of fresh air, a change of pace, and I think even a point that I made earlier is that I just wish in that game they offered some kind of break from the exploration and the battle, and those two things is just a lot of those two same things back to back, and so Triangle Strategy, I feel like, has these long story moments, but I'm invested in the story, and then I'm enjoying the battles, and
your choices, whether or not they really matter or whether or not they don't, it feels like they matter.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of, like your convictions have whatever it says in the game. I can't remember now, but like, which feels like, ooh, I did something, and it's sending me on a specific path. And there are more than one path. And yeah.
But I'm enjoying the pace of it more, and it feels like that break in Shin Megami Tensei that I need right now. I would like to return to it and finish it. I feel like that's also just kind of who I am as I will.
I'm that way too.
Come back and finish it.
Well,
but I'm not in a rush. Also,
yeah. Well, this series has also like. The longer it goes without us having done this episode adds to that feeling of like, are we going to do it? And adds to that feeling of no rush. Like when we played Fire Emblem and had that felt a little easier because it was chapter based. And so it could be like, okay, we're going to do 3 chapters, and a chapter felt like maybe not every chapter is the same length, but it felt knowable. But these 4 sections of this game, like you said, you spent 110 hours on this game, so that's how we've broken it out, 3 sections, so that's a good 30 something hours per section, you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's a lot of game time, and we're grown adults with jobs and friends and
life things,
and like other games to play, and so it's definitely been a bigger commitment in some way, even though I don't know that you might have ended up putting 100 hours into Fire Emblem by the end of the time that we did that podcast. Probably not, maybe not, I don't know, but I feel like I am going to have put more time into this than I put into Fire Emblem by the time we finish the podcast, for sure.
Okay. So I know that I have done 2 playthroughs of Fire Emblem and the DLC, and that is at 165 hours right now. So very likely, it's quite a bit less. Yeah.
Well, doesn't matter. Every game's different, and that's fine. And I do think this is a good game still. I just think there are obviously criticisms I have of it that are more significant than of some other similar games, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
And I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I am open to trying to finish this, but obviously we've been on this amorphous time schedule because of the way it is, and the way we've structured it, which might be our own fault. I don't know, but I'm also not like mad.
No,
there's nobody that's out there that's like, pitchforks, where's the next episode of this?
Where
hopefully
is it? I want those people
to force us to finish this game.
Demand me play more video games. Somebody out there care.
Well, I you heard it vaguely here. We might do the last episode and finish this at some unspecified date. Hopefully before the midway point of this year.
I don't know. Well, and I'm also not tied to. I'm setting the personal goal that I will finish it.
Right.
We don't have to finish the podcast if we don't. Yeah. And that's a little bit of it too of it didn't feel like this way for me with Fire Emblem, but with this way it's like I feel like I kind of have homework right.
And that's not fun.
Yeah. But I'm wondering why it feels that way with this game and it didn't feel that way with Fire Emblem.
Because it was more fun. I mean, because playing the game in and of itself was more rewarding, and then it felt more exciting, and it felt like there's more to talk about. Not that, I mean, we've yacked for an hour and a half every time, so there's plenty to talk about, but I feel like the story element was a bigger part to talk about, right? It was interesting to be like, who do you like? I like Ferdinand or whatever. Nobody likes Ferdinand, but or probably some people do, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that is more interesting. It was more interesting to come together and talk about that instead of coming back and be like, well, this map was frustrating too.
Yes.
And there were some cool demons, but they don't have personality other than their visuals.
Yeah.
And then there's not much story. And then it's like, that was a little bit of a slog.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just spitballing.
I agree. And you're right. Is Fire Emblem was really interesting to talk about because it was less of this like. I feel like this is like a mechanism. This is like a little bit of a Rubik's Cube RPG experience versus this like very narratively rich. You get those character conversations as well, and we'd say, I learned this secret about the world through what was her name, Flynn,
right?
But like, I think she might
there was
be
mystery and intrigue and factions and I guess theoretically there's those things in this game, but you don't really understand it enough to like have investment in it.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, maybe we'll do our homework and finish this, and maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do another episode. I know that's a very vague promise, but I think that's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Well, I think that is there anything else about any of this that you want to say before we close?
Real quick, I also want to say, when we started this podcast, we talked a little bit about this as like adult Pokemon, of like it being this monster hunting situation. But another big thing that I experienced was then Arceus came out and everyone's like, no, this is the adult Pokemon everyone's been waiting for. And I've had a little bit of FOMO because I haven't invested in Arceus due to playing this game. So after Triangle Strategy, maybe that's where I go next, and maybe we could compare those two or have some level of conversation around that.
Yeah. Sure. I haven't played much of Arceus, and I'll be honest, I didn't love it. I never got out of the tutorial, which people told me, well, you got to get out. It's like, well, but I didn't want to. So
that doesn't bode well. Yeah.
But I just notoriously not a big Pokemon person. But yeah, I also think the Pokemon like aspect of this game has faded for me. I don't really want to collect every demon. Mm-hmm. I just want to get to the next thing. Man, I feel like I'm real down on it, but again, having talked about it has made me a little bit more reinvigorated. And there were times in this section where I was I honestly think enjoying the game the most that I have, but then bumped up against that, just frustration.
Yeah.
To progress took me way longer than I felt like it should have to find that seventh thing, or to like get to yet another boss, or just that little bit too long.
Got it.
All right, but I've hammered on that point home. So, but thanks for listening to us complain for an hour and a half or whatever. You folks out there,
if you've made it this far, we'll get you a cookie.
Yeah.
Email me if you live nearby. We'll get coffee. I don't know.
All right. I think that does it then. So this is the end of episode 4 of Optimal Fusion. Thanks everybody for listening.
Toodles.